Welcome to American Dreams, Keys to Success, with your host, Alan Olson.
Welcome back. We're here today with Dr. Douglas Park. He practices law at Ramon Attorneys and teaches classes on entrepreneurship at Stanford University. Welcome to today's show, Dr. Park.
Thank you for having me today, Alan.
So, you've been able to accomplish quite a bit in your life. Can you share some of your background and how you arrived at where you are today?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Texas, San Antonio, Texas, and I'm a huge San Antonio Spurs basketball fan. I went to school through high school in San Antonio, went to Harvard College for my undergraduate degree. Really enjoyed my time there, learned a lot, met a lot of great people, studied sociology, in fact. I'm very fascinated by relationships among people and how that works and how groups and organizations work in business and society. And after I finished at Harvard, I decided I wanted to teach and do research, become a faculty member. And in particular, I decided I wanted to do that in a very applied way, so in a business school. So I decided to attend the PhD program in organizational behavior at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, where I focused on issues of strategy in companies, both large and small. While I was at Stanford, I started to work with startups and companies here in Silicon Valley, which I found really fascinating because that was really my first exposure to the tech startup scene. And remember, this was almost 20 years ago. I started the program at Stanford in the early 1990s. And after I finished my degree at Stanford, I was looking for faculty positions, and I decided that business was becoming increasingly global. This is 1997, Alan, and in particular, at that point in time, Hong Kong was going to revert from British control to Chinese control, and I thought that that would be a fascinating place to learn about business, especially on a global scale. And so I decided to take a faculty position at the business school, the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, which is the newest university in Hong Kong and is modeled after Western and American universities with a very heavy emphasis on research. And so when I was in Hong Kong, I taught courses in entrepreneurship, strategy, and organizational behavior, all levels of students, from undergraduates all the way up to senior executives. So when we're looking at a PhD in strategy and teaching entrepreneurship, when you're counseling the students, because Stanford, phenomenal track record of some of the best companies in the world, coming out of those students. How do you advise them of what it takes to succeed with a new company today? Sure. So one of the the biggest thing, the biggest key to success of any company, new or established, is execution. So oftentimes companies have a great product. They might even have very good funding. They might have excellent people. But where a big obstacle to their success is whether or not they can really implement and execute on their business model, their strategy, their culture. And so that is the very tricky part, because other things can become fairly routine in terms of processes, but the question is, do you have the right processes? And are those processes and procedures being properly implemented and executed by the individuals in the company?
So in the process of execution, obviously accountability is important. The return and the report from what you said that you were going to do.
Yes.
When companies are at the startup phase, oftentimes they're challenged with finding money, hiring the right people.
Yes.
Do you cover all those bases?
Yes, I do. I cover those bases in not only my class, but I also cover those issues when I advise companies. I like to bring my business experience to bear on my advice that I bring to companies, and I feel that also understanding the legal implications or the legal aspects of those business decisions helps me give better advice.
So when you're in the program there, would you advise that an individual that does not have money go find the money before they actually start in the program, or would you advise that they kind of bootstrap it and then find it as things progress?
Well, today, to get money, you need to show some evidence of success. You have to have a prototype, a beta website or product or service. And so today, bootstrapping is much more important, and it's a critical first step to getting large-scale funding.
We're here today visiting with Dr. Park. He teaches entrepreneurship at Stanford University. We'll be right back after this message. We'll cover more information on what it takes to be a socially responsible business today.
Protecting your family's health and welfare is a sacred trust. At Greenstein Rogoff Olson Company, we know that sound financial planning will protect them now and in the future. We're certified public accountants with tax services for the highly successful. For your business and your family, call GrowCo.
Greenstein Rogoff Olson Company will help you manage your financial affairs so you can focus on what's really important in life.
GrowCo, helping you along the way.
Apple pie, baseball, and now here's All-American Alan Olson.
Welcome back. We're visiting today with Dr. Douglas Park of Stanford University. He holds a PhD in strategy and works with the students at Stanford on entrepreneurship, teaching entrepreneurship classes. We've been talking about how to make a successful startup in today's economy. So, Dr. Park, back to the question, what are the biggest challenges that entrepreneurs face in trying to overcome, making a successful startup today?
Sure. So there are really three keys to building a foundation for a successful company. One is having a great product. It's not just an idea, but actually a product that customers are willing to pay for and that provides a benefit. Secondly, there has to be a great market. And that means that the market is large and growing, and it's economically attractive. There are some markets that simply are not economically attractive. A big example, two examples are restaurants and airlines, traditionally unattractive industries. And third is great people. Great people are critical to be able to properly motivate, develop, and execute on a business plan and strategy, and implement the right kind of culture to produce success.
The new market is just awful for graduates
Yes.
coming out today,
Sure.
MBAs and law degrees. A lot of them, particularly, they just can't find jobs. So
Yes.
if they wanted to go the route of starting their own company and they come to you, Dr. Park, tell us, where should we start?
Find a problem. Number one, find a problem that needs to be solved. But secondly, that problem has to be something that you care about, that you're passionate about, because starting a new company is going to be a long haul. It's going to be a big challenge. It's going to take resilience and persistence, and you're going to face a lot of obstacles along the way. So if you don't have a real commitment to your business, it's going to be very difficult to make it succeed.
I think that's so true. In my business, running an accounting firm, we often get a lot of these new companies that
Yes.
come start up, and you can tell the difference between those that will make it and those that won't.
Yes.
When the individual with the passion, the fire in their eyes comes and says, I really want this to succeed, and I don't care how much money I make, I want to succeed in solving the problem, oftentimes they'll persevere and work through to see the company make it.
Yes,
Versus
absolutely.
the individual counting, well, how much money am I going to get? So
That's right. And your business partners can see that too. Whether you're going to enter in some kind of strategic alliance with them, whether you're looking to an investor to get money, investors can tell that as well, whether the entrepreneur really cares about what they're doing.
So what pitfalls do startup companies often face?
Well, oftentimes the founders, especially when there are several co-founders, 2, 3, 4, they face issues in terms of really kind of cementing the relationship amongst themselves. So it's one mistake that founding teams often make is they split the equity in a company equally. that arrangement rarely works and is rarely the right solution because the contributions, even at the initial stages, usually are not equal, and especially going forward, they're not equal. So one thing to think about is whether it really makes sense to split equity equally. Secondly, another mistake that companies sometimes make is that the equity, the stock in the company vests immediately. And in fact, it's important to distribute any equity share in the company over time. So those are two very simple things that at a very early stage founding teams tend to do, but tend to cause problems later on.
And do you tie the equity vesting into hitting benchmarks and execution?
Yes, absolutely. It's better to do that as opposed to simply time with the company. Now, time with the company is very easy to measure, but it's also better to, if you can, to tie it to the benchmarks that you just mentioned, Alan.
I'm visiting here today with Dr. Douglas Park. He's a professor at Stanford University and also the president of the Silicon Valley chapter of the Harvard Club. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with these messages, and I want to expand more on what it takes to make a successful startup in today's economy. Nothing's more important than spending time with your family.
At Greenstone Rogoff Olson Company, we're trusted advisors to the highly successful. Our goal is to help you find the right strategy to protect your wealth for yourself and those you love. Kids! Why do I feel like I've just had an audit?
As trusted advisors to the highly successful, we'll make sure that you don't lose your shirt.
Roco helping you along the way.
Apple pie, baseball, and now here's All-American Alan Olson.
Welcome back. We're here today visiting with Dr. Douglas Park. He's a professor at Stanford University and teaches entrepreneurship there. And before the break, we're talking about, some of the things that the startup companies need to watch out for. I'd like to pick up on this topic because, it said, I don't know how accurate this statistic is, but I heard it's 1 out of 7 startup companies making it, or am I close?
It's probably even much smaller than that, Alan. I think it's 1 out of 7 venture-funded companies make it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So when we're looking at this world of startups,
yes,
there's more that aren't making it than are. And so as a professor of at Stanford, and by the way, 50% of all the venture money in the world is coming out of Silicon Valley.
Yes.
And this is really an incubator for the worldwide companies. So when we look at this, what are some of the things that you advise people starting their own businesses to look out for?
Well, when we think especially about issues of implementing and executing the strategy and the business model, there are a couple of things that to watch out for. Number one is oftentimes technology-based companies sometimes wait too long to get their product out. That is, they try to perfect their product. They wait until the product is just right before they release it. That oftentimes is a mistake. In fact, one of my students, the last time that I taught the startups class, who was running a networking equipment company, said that in hindsight, that was exactly the mistake that he made. He waited too long to get the product out into the market to get feedback and to see whether or not customers were going to be willing to pay for that product.
So if you have a startup company and you have a customer, just go for it.
That's right.
And if it doesn't work, you adjust along the way.
That's right. You improve, you revise.
Uh-huh.
Okay? And that is something that in general companies need to do, especially at the very early stages, is to be willing to revise their plan. But at the same time, it's also important not to lose your commitment to your chosen path too early. So for instance, if you look at Pinterest, now wildly successful, that team went for almost 2-3 years before they experienced success, but they didn't change the basic nature of their business, what they were doing, and how they wanted to do it. A third thing, Alan, that I think a lot of companies should think about is instead of focusing so much on the product and in particular the technological features, is focusing on really understanding and trying to figure out the match between those features and what the customers want. And this involves a degree of storytelling. Once you know what your product is and who your customer is and what problem it's solving, what story are you going to tell about that? So again, if you look at Pinterest, the company has almost a third of its about 20 employees are not technical people at all. They're out there trying to understand what their community of users wants from Pinterest.
So, it's interesting. It's oftentimes those relationships that make or break these new companies.
Yes.
And, so often you hear the guy that was working for, an HP or another company, and they said, well, we're going to fire you, but if you want to go develop this product, then we'll pay you as an independent. And
that's right.
And these little companies are born.
That's right.
Time after time. I'm familiar with Cisco has done that time and time again. They may have something that's not part of their core strategy, but they release the group and then they do a joint venture with them.
That's right. So those kind of relationships from former employers, former business colleagues can be extremely valuable in getting support, all kinds of support, people support, financial support, technical support.
What about for the individual that says, well, I just want to go make the next Cisco, but I don't have a relationship? How would you advise them?
That certainly you're going to be facing an uphill battle if you do that. So I think it's very important, first of all, it's very important to understand the market or the industry you're in. And that includes understanding who the key players are, the companies, the individuals. And I would say you need to take some time actually to develop those relationships. It's extremely helpful to do that. It's just very hard. It's an extreme challenge to go into an industry where you don't know people, because presumably if you don't know people, you probably don't have much experience in that market space.
Mm-hmm. So the point there is build your network while you're in place.
That's right.
Before you step out and start to do your own business.
I think that's excellent advice, Alan.
Yeah, it's and I think that in the world when we deal with a new startup, I see there's three things that you need. You need to know the person, like the person, and trust the person.
Yes.
And then once that's in place, it's never about price. It's about trusting and feeling that a deliverable can come back. These are all good thoughts there. So you serve as a director on several startup companies here.
Yes.
And what do you think in terms of the state of the valley right now? What do you see happening with innovation? Is it continuing or what?
It is. I think that there is innovation. There have been some critics, in particular about startups surrounding social networking and social media companies, saying that those kind of companies aren't really doing anything new or really innovating. But I think what you see all around is in a number of different industries, Alan, there's extreme disruption and change going on. Just a couple of examples. Digital media, including movies, books, music. In the last 5-10 years, we've seen sea changes in the delivery and distribution and the economics of all of those. For example, with the rise of iTunes, Netflix, other streaming services. If you look at financial services, now there's a much greater ability of consumers and even institutions to do business in terms of financial transactions online. Healthcare has been greatly disrupted, the delivery and the economics of it. Now there are even online providers of various healthcare, medical services, diagnostic services. Healthcare IT is changing the way that information is shared among medical providers.
It's amazing. Innovation as it continues, and just when we think what we've seen it all. Yesterday I got this email on my computer. Corning Glass was showing the future of the computer.
Sure.
There was no computer. It was all in your mirror or in your in the glass that you looked at.
Right.
It's just amazing.
So there's a company out of Korea now that is developing a flexible battery that will, if it works, will allow for mobile devices of all types that can be folded and made extremely compact, but unfolded as well and used in a large-scale form. So that's just that kind of just that's just an example. We see innovation not only here in the Valley, but increasingly in many innovation centers around the world, and I think it's truly exciting.
Dr. Park, it's been a pleasure having you on our show.
Thank you for having me, Alan.
Thank you. We'll be right back after these messages.
You're listening to American Dreams with Alan Olson on AM 1220 KDOW.